KCRW sponsors include A24, presenting Moonlight, a film chronicling 3 chapters in the life of a young black man discovering his identity and experiencing first love as he moves from childhood into manhood. In theaters now.
Hey, I'm Josh Barrow, your new host of Left, Right, and Center. Every week, join Rich Lowry, Bob Scheer, and me for a contentious yet civilized debate of the week's big political stories, from ISIS to the U.S. economy to this 47-candidate presidential election we're having. You can find Left, Right, and Center on KCRW's iTunes page.
From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. Welcome to The Treatment. I'm Elvis Mitchell. So let me try out some of the guest stars for you that have done this show. Keegan-Michael Key, Amy Sedaris, Roger Rees, Marsha Mason, Chris Kattan, Casey Wilson. Now I'll tell you the name of the show. It's The Middle. It's a show that some of the other guest stars, Jack McBrayer, Dave Foley, Norm Macdonald, John Cullum. I mean, the show that's reached from the stage to comedy to improv comedy. It's one of the most impressive group of guest stars I can think of in any sitcom, especially one that's been on for now 7 years. The show's creators, Eileen Heisler and DeAnn Heline, are sitting across from me. First of all, guys, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you
for having us.
It's great to be here. And I didn't realize we had all those guest stars. It's very cool.
You listed them all.
It's so cool. I'm like, what show is this? Oh, good, it's The Middle.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call attention to your work.
It's awesome.
But I think what the show feels to me like it's finally about is empathy.
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah,
I mean, because
like
it really
that.
is sort of about the idea of having to understand somebody else, what they're going through, not just sympathize, but empathize with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at some point that happens in almost every episode. But for those of our hipster public radio listeners who are yet to watch The Middle, explain the setting, which is...
It's a really dumpy house, isn't it?
But it's set in Orson, Indiana, which I always hoped it got its name from Orson Welles, but who knows if it's for real or not.
Yeah, it is our own little made-up town. You know, I think we started with Jasper, the idea of a town like Jasper, Indiana, which was a guy's name. And, of course, Jasper didn't clear, so we started thinking of every kind of podunky-sounding name. And then we kind of liked the beauty of Orson and Orson Welles gelling together. But it's a Midwest town in the middle of the country, middle class, middle age. That's kind of where it began. And it's really messy. It's a very messy, messy set. And we hope kind of a real world and a family just kind of trying to keep ahead of their own game. We started out the show saying it was like triage that this family deals with. You know, every day, what is it we're dealing with today? And they just do without a lot of fanfare.
DeAnn, if you talk a little bit about the show, too, because I know you guys basically started together and worked on Roseanne and Committed and these and even Murphy Brown. But
Yeah.
Roseanne was really the first show that was sort of defiantly middle class.
Right.
And this show really, to me, feels like it could be a sister show to that.
Yeah, I mean, Roseanne was just such a joy for us to write. I mean, we've loved every experience all the shows that we've worked on have been great, but something about Roseanne, about touching the heart of, you know, people who are struggling. It just sort of felt like those dramas were more real to us in a way. When we first created the show, it's funny because we were working on the pilot for Lipstick Jungle, and that show was all about, you know, it's going to be wish fulfillment because they're going to wear
A very glossy show.
Right, they're going to wear fabulous shoes, they're going to wear fabulous apartments, they're going to have fabulous jobs. And Eileen and I kept feeling like, when I talk about wish fulfillment, I kind of miss the Midwest, you know, where it was like, where people, if you're in trouble, they stop by with a tuna casserole, you know, and those kind of just small family neighbor kind of moments was our wish fulfillment, maybe because we lived in LA now, you know, and our lives have gotten bigger and bigger. And so when we talked about what's our wish fulfillment, The Middle was that for us.
Yeah, we wanted to go home, you know. Deann and I are very nostalgic. If we're ever driving and we're in, you know, we see a BJ's Pizza in a giant parking lot with lots of parking, we both go, oh, you know, it just looks like home. It's the Midwest. So it came from our strange wish fulfillment.
We said the show is about the Heck family and parents, 3 kids, struggling to maintain. But also what's so much fun about the show is that it's really kind of about just the day-to-day of living in a family. Sure. But each season kind of leads up to something. And I just wondered when you guys are conceiving this show, if you knew that you want to build it out towards something by the end of each season. Because what's fun about the show is each episode feels anecdotal and begins with almost dealing with like an American tradition, or
Yeah.
and then sort of showing how that doesn't really relate to anybody except these bits of film we see in the beginning of the show.
That's right. I think when we set out to tell the story, we really, I think we in some ways approach it as the Hex do. You know, I think we've had our master plan from the beginning, I would say, is that we hoped that it would build past just being about Frankie mostly. We knew it was going to be
And
ultimately.
Frankie's the mom.
Yeah, the mom. We
Played by
knew it was.
Patricia Heaton.
Yeah, absolutely. She's amazing, and we knew we wanted it to be, to go beyond that and be about day-to-day things in a family. And the way that it's gone, the episodes have kind of built to a conclusion. We've had natural life events, graduations, things like that. It's how we just kind of live with them and see what happens.
Well, that's
in a
what's
way.
great about doing a family show is that the family grows and changes.
Yeah.
So every season, okay, now this year Sue's starting college, so we do have new events, just as you have in your family. And we do at the beginning of the year, though, sit down and say, kind of what is our theme for this year? And what is our, and sometimes, you're not always hitting it, but we definitely always start the season. We have a plan, like thinking about where we want to start, where we want to end, and then there's lots of, 24 episodes in between. So
Yes.
It's a lot.
Let me ask you this, Eileen. One of the things feels like, and I don't know how big an influence this is for you guys coming from Indiana, but the movie Breaking Away,
Oh, absolutely.
which is very much anecdotal. I mean, it builds to this big Pike thing, but this feels a lot to me like that kind of thing.
Yeah, the rhythms, I think, were something that we discussed because I'm from outside Chicago, Indiana, and we met at Indiana University, and we did love that movie and just sort of, I guess, the easiness, the kind of wow rhythm kind of Roseanne or that show was something, two people sitting on a porch commenting on something. I think that definitely was an influence in addition to Roseanne, for sure.
And, and in the pilot, she talks about, we show people on a plane and it's like, we're the people that you fly over, and so it was just like, what are those people's lives? So we always wanted, and it's funny because in some ways by keeping the show simple, like we don't get a lot of, press, I don't say not a lot of press, but I mean, it's not the hip show that everyone's talking about. It's not, the Mindy Project and Modern Family and all those that get those big,
It's not as shiny.
It's not shiny, But it's funny because we've always been, the writers, the cast, and everyone have always kind of been okay with that. We have a kind of a running joke that every time we get the word unappreciated in a review, we take a drink.
It's the treatment my guests are Eileen Heisler DeAnn Heline, the creators of The Middle. If you look just the number of people I've named, in fact, I was sitting on a plane with Roger Rees, and I just had to go over and say hi to him. And I said, what are you doing going to LA? He goes, I'm going to do The Middle. You're doing The Middle?
The amazing Roger Rees.
what?
Oh, yeah.
I love that show. And by the way, for those who don't know, Roger Rees was part of a really important Broadway show of about 35 years ago, an 8-hour staging of Nicholas Nickleby. And these are the kinds of people who do this show. There's a kind of
amazing.
professionalism that this show attracts. But the show is also, for me, so much about tolerance. And for me, I can't think of anything. I'm always laughing, just if I can say this out loud. Sue and Brad.
Oh, yeah.
Sue is the middle daughter. She's the middle of the middle, actually.
Yeah, she is
Yeah.
the middleist.
And in her way, kind of the heart of the show.
Yes.
And Sue, as a high schooler, had a boyfriend
Yes.
who looked like he went on to write for episodes of Glee.
Yes. Yes. She was not quite aware.
But her
that Brad
parents
wasn't.
were, and nobody
Yeah.
made a big deal. I mean, that's
They
one
just
of-
didn't talk about it.
It's the kind of thing on any other show would have been a huge deal.
Right.
And to
Absolutely.
me, it kind of speaks to this sort of like reality
Right.
the show wants to set, that it's just part of the detail of the world.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
That they just take it as it
Right.
comes.
And even when we have like guest cast on, like you're talking about, we usually always like have the role first, and then
Yes,
we say,
that's
who
true.
would be great to play this? Oh my God, can we get Roger Rees? And then he says yes. We don't really.
So you wrote it for Roger, and you pitched it to him?
Well,
Yeah.
well, we wrote the part first, and then we said, "Hey, can you come on
Wouldn't
and
that be
play this?"
great?
You know,
Yeah.
and so we usually, even when we have these big guest stars, hopefully they're usually coming on to play. They feel real in our world because that's important to us. It's that it's not just all of a sudden, and here's something else.
Yeah, it's a role
you
that
know?
we've created. Like, Sue's got this teacher, he's tough, what would be interesting? And we had worked a little bit with Roger Rees in the past and thought, oh, what if it were Roger Rees? And then we're thinking, how's this British guy going to be? And we're saying, oh, who cares? He's amazing. And we were just like in awe. And in some ways, the guests that we have on the show are our really the guilty pleasure of just getting to work with people who you've always loved, and
And
it's
what's
really
nice is
exciting.
people always want to come back because honestly, like I guess the show is, it's just a really nice, lovely place to work. The cast is so lovely, so when they come on, people have the best time.
It feels
and they
Midwesty
really want to
there.
come back. So it does feel
really
very
does.
Midwesty
People say
there.
it's nice here. It's calm. Like there's no. It is. It's a nice world that we like to play in. For
But
sure.
it's a show that whose pleasures come from the fact that it really does, rather than celebrate, it deals with you every day. But again, this idea of, again, I'm tearing up talking about this, of Brad, who every time he smiles,
The world's most giant smile you've
He
ever
has
seen
the
in the
biggest
entire
smile
world.
in the world, doesn't he?
it's like he's auditioning for the Music Man in every
Right, he's
conversation.
Sparkles
loved.
are flying off.
Right. He
Talk
loves
about-
life.
As does she.
Right, they're the perfect friends. Perfect friends.
So
yeah.
describe how that coupling came together, or that
my
character was
gosh.
created.
Well, it was originally created because I believe that you had
Oh, a
had a
string.
boyfriend that you realized as you got older, you realized he was probably gay.
Yeah.
And it was something that
Did
when
everybody else know? Like,
Everyone
in the
else
show?
Oh, I'm
knew.
sure. I started thinking, what did my parents know? Of course they did. You know?
Right. So it was really just a one-time thing. We didn't
Yes.
think it was going to be a recurring character. We were just going to have him on, and it was Sue's first boyfriend, and we thought it was funny that the parents were like, sure, go to your room and close the door. Like, we're fine. Like, it's all good. Like, there was some relief in going, Sue's going to be fine here. They're just going to be friends. It's going to be, So that it really was just a one-time thing, and then he was so great. And so then it was, let's bring him back and do recurring, and the character has just evolved from there.
Yeah, and they're just they both are. He became such a great best friend for her. And I remember it was funny when Sue had another boyfriend. We introduced the wrestling boyfriend years ago, and Brock, who plays Brad, at the makeup trailer was like, "Bye," and he's giving me all these big hugs, and I'm like, "Why is he acting this way? Of course he's going to be back," but in his own mind, he thought like he is the boyfriend had moved on, and there was a new one in the picture. But we said, "No, you're going to be back," and he still is for many episodes this
But
season.
it becomes a way to sort of, with Sue's character, for example, to chart this kind of evolution, because she goes from him to Darren, who really is a kind of a
Yes.
threatening boyfriend.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, he's
Yeah,
he's
big time.
sweetly macho, but kind of all macho.
Exactly,
right,
exactly.
right.
So I think that, Brad was
And that was
a
very
stepping
much
stone.
a threat for the parents. 'Cause
Exactly.
all of a sudden you're going from completely innocent boyfriend to this guy wants to get married and wants her to move
and
into
has
his
friends
thing
who
and-
have kids.
That's
Right,
right, absolutely.
right.
And it kind of took them, I think, them all,
Right.
by surprise.
Right.
We're going to take a break. I'm here with Eileen Heisler and DeAnn Heline, the creators of The Middle. I like this show a lot. It's The Treatment. We're going to talk more about it. Stay with us.
Take KCRW with you on one of our mobile apps. Available for iPhone, Android, and BlackBerry devices. Stream KCRW live, listen to podcasts, and our News 24 and Eclectic 24 streams. Learn more and download at kcrw.com/apps.
Welcome back. It's The Treatment. The Treatment. My guests are the creators of The Middle, Eileen Heisler and DeAnn Heline. And that whisper I just did comes from the youngest son, Brick, who started to just repeat whisper. And first of all, the young actor who plays Atticus has the best timing and the deadpan voice of a character actor from a 30s
He's
screwball
amazing.
comedy.
Yeah, he is a comedic genius, and it started when he was tiny. When we started the show, when he was just
But
like
we're so
8.
lucky because a lot of times, you cast these kids when they're 7 or 8, and then they grow up and they just sort of become less funny, or their funny was their cuteness. And, as he started to get older and we're like, oh, we have to kind of change a little bit the way he's written, and kind of, but the great discovery was that he's super funny. And so even as he's aged, he just gets funnier
No,
and
he's
funnier.
just more
So we're so lucky
accomplished.
that way.
Yeah, it's like it's a really kind of uncanny sense of timing he has that just came from nobody knows where. But he's a very bright, very 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 bright young man, and he's amazing.
Could you tell when he did that whisper for the first time that it was going to become a recurrent thing?
Well, we kind of knew it would be anyway. I said it was.
Oh, okay.
It was based on Eileen's son.
Based
did
on
that.
Is anything based on your life, DeAnn? It's
Yes,
all
no.
Eileen's life.
Pretty much everything Sue did is based on my
She's
life.
done
so-
Did you do a kung fu fighting
I
thing?
did. I did kung fu fighting.
Okay.
I did.
Absolutely did.
You have to explain for the listeners the kung fu fighting episode of the.
Well, the kung fu fighting came from my own life, where I think I might have been in 6th grade.
Probably too old to be
And we had bullies across the street named the Gloshners.
Oh my God, they really were the Glossners?
They really were the Gloshners.
The Glossners, I should say, by the way, played the mom, Rita, played so beautifully and terrifyingly by Brooke Shields.
Right. And so they would always like throw rocks at us, and they would, throw snowballs and all this stuff. And so they finally decided, they at one point said, well, you want to fight? We said, so my friend and I, who are girls, were like, yeah, we'll fight. Like, we've never been in a fight in our lives. So after school, okay, fine. So we're gonna come to your house after school and we're gonna fight. So we said, okay. And so to us that meant we should then prepare a choreographed routine to kung fu fighting.
Naturally.
So we took like our boom box and got a long extension cord, and after school we choreographed this whole thing. And the whole point was we would dance, and then when it came to everybody was kung fu fighting, then we'd go and we'd kick them and they would fall down, was the idea behind it.
I don't know how it failed.
Yeah, right? So it's snowing out, or it's very like snow drifts are out there. We go there, we take the boom box out there. We start our routine, to which they're just horrified and confused. And when we got to everybody was kung fu fighting, when we go to kick them, they just stepped out of the way, so we missed, and then they shoved us down in the snow and left.
So you were no longer a threat. But one of the things I want to ask you guys about is that the males are kind of almost all sort of self-absorbed. I mean, Axel is basically the coolest guy on the planet. His little brother, Brick, is completely absorbed in books. Mike's just absorbed in not being part of the, I mean, trying to just have a beer and go to work.
Right.
And the mom and Frankie and Sue are really the ones who are kind of outgoing and looking for experience. And I wonder if that was something that when that sort of came about in the writing, because it's really a kind of an interesting sort of gender difference between the men and the women in the household.
It is true. I mean, well, Brick, as I was saying, was based on my son, and who, when he was young, whispered and did things like that, and lives. And
is he an obsessive reader as well?
He is, and he was reading since the age of 2. So a lot of those particulars came out of that, and my son tended to live a little bit in his own world, and that's where that came from for Brick. But I think Mike, always was based on sort of an iconic idea of a Midwestern man that we both had in our heads. Some of it comes from Deanne's grandpa and things like that, of somebody with dignity who kind of doesn't say a lot of words, but when they say they're going to do something, they do it.
Like in the history of the series, Mike has never told Frankie he loves her.
No.
There was a big breakthrough just recently when Mike wore a Hawaiian shirt.
Right, exactly.
Loose a little bit.
But our hope is that you feel the love, and he would do anything for his family, anything for his, for Frankie. So it was kind of that just quiet Midwestern kind of guy. So I can't say that we said, hey, let's make all the guys this way and all the females this way. I think that we were sort of character specific, and then it kind of maybe evolved.
Yeah, and I think Axel is, we hope evolving. He still is hilarious when he's self-centered, but he is growing a bit, and in the future we're going to explore him in an internship in the business world and having to grow up a hair. But I think that we're lucky that our actors are so sweet. Our actors all have a real sweetness about them. And so particularly I would say the character of Axel, Charlie, is probably the most different from his character. And if he were just a guy who was jerky in real life, nobody would love Axel. And I think it is that sweetness that comes through. And I think Neil Flynn has a very kind of old-fashioned man from the 40s.
Neil Flynn plays Mike. I mean, for those of you who saw Major League, he's in Major League.
Oh, yeah. And he has
also Scrubs,
a real dignity and a warmth that comes through. We wanted our men not to be just like female creations of perfect kind of men we'd like to create, but I think that they are very male, but hopefully warm as well. Just kind of evolved that way.
But I just think that for me, that's been the thing that I found fascinating about the shows. These guys have all evolved, these kind of guys who live inside of a shell one way or another, and the women are almost desperate.
They're very emotional, the ladies on the show.
I mean, just whenever Frankie wants to try to do something to create an experience, like when she and Sue go to the spa, which is almost like a honeymooners episode.
Yes, a terrible spa. But it's true.
You're listening to Eileen Heisler, the other co-creator of the show. The middle is DeAnn Heline. It's The Treatment. Let me ask you guys, too, because there's so much of the show I think is being really subtle. And I wondered at what point you sort of said, because when you're writing a pilot and you're trying to sell a lot. The idea of saying, no, we have to hold some of this back. We can't front load it. It's one of the rare pilots, I'll ask, because you've written a bunch, where that pilot really set the template for what the show was. Because in so many ways, pilots feel very different.
That's right, it did.
And this one does not.
As a matter of fact, I was cleaning out my office the other day, and I just had stacks of papers, and I was going through things, and I found our treatment for the pilot. And when I looked through it and read it, I went, oh, my God, like it really it's what it is now, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's
that
very
was
cool.
that is unusual, I think.
Yeah,
you know.
that's why I bring that up. Did you guys know that going in that this is that you when you worked on writing the pilot? Because I know you did an earlier pilot and then you got a chance to redo it. Were the differences between that earlier pilot and the one that you end up doing the second time around? And B, did you know or did you say to yourselves going in because you worked together for so long, let's write a pilot that feels like a show rather than a pilot that feels like a presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that pilots can get very bogged down by pipe and exposition. And we knew for sure that we wanted to start the pilot. We started it with Frankie in a superhero costume in the middle of nowhere because we wanted people to be interested, not like, hi, here I am in my house with my family. You know, that's what often kills pilots. I think that, I don't know, it seems to me like having done the amount of things we've done, we had a very clear vision, I think, for this show. And we just kind of knew what it was. And I think we wanted very much to present in the pilot a typical episode. I think that the difference between the pilot and now, I think the show has slowed down a little in its rhythm because when you're making a pilot, I think they always push you more jokes, faster. And I think the rhythm of that pilot is certainly faster than the rhythm that the show eased into. But I think we were very fortunate, and we do frequently look back and say, wow, that is the show. And we were fortunate people gave us the room to trust us, I think, at that point. To be able to present the show that you wanted ultimately to present is rare because there's so much pressure on a pilot.
And then our challenge now is like starting our you know, when you get into year 6 and year 7 is I think a lot of shows tend to, writers get bored, actors get bored, you know, let's go do something wackier, let's send them here, let's send them there. And for me, I always felt as a viewer, it's hard because you're like, no, I want them to stay in the Cheers bar. I don't want to go out and see them where, you know. So our challenge here is to keep it still small and anecdotal and all that, yet, you know, keep pushing the characters or to try and do something different so people don't go, oh, yeah, that's an episode like I saw in season 4. You know, that's the challenge, to still stay true to what it is, you know, yet having the characters
Yeah,
evolve.
and I think in the difference between the very first pilot we made, we had trouble casting it properly. I think a lot of what the middle is now was certainly in that first one. We didn't change.
It was a little darker,
It was
I would
darker
say.
and probably not as warm.
Darker in what way?
It felt
more
a little bit more
snide,
independent, filmy. Like even the colors weren't as vivid. It was a little more washed out in the look.
Okay.
It was a little bit more quiet.
It was a little more sarcastic. I mean, I think it
yeah.
might have been a hair edgier, less warm.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I think that the evolution of Axel was very different.
Yeah, Axel's character was very different. So when we did it again, one of the things from the network was, you know, they loved the pilot. That's why they made it again. Yet they also felt like it can't just be that again. So we did make an effort to say, you know, let's bring in more color. We always felt it was a warm place, so let's try and warm it up. Obviously, we had a different cast, which changed things completely.
And I think the way it is now is more really what our original vision was. It just took a little while to get there. But like in our office, you can see there are these art presentations that were the first time we took. We had to take them to ABC before we shot the second pilot to show them what it would look like. And they were pictures from magazines and pictures of picnics. And one was a cover of a notebook I found that had like pie and Midwestern things on it. And that color palette and all that is what the show, you know, looks like. So I think we had a vision and we were lucky enough that it ended up that way.
So I understand you guys shoot the show on film?
Yeah, I think we're one of the only shows that still shoots on film. Kodak almost stopped making film, but they made some more, so we could keep shooting. But yes,
We started when the first year was on 16 millimeter.
that's right. It was the first 13, I believe, were on 16 millimeter, and the pilot was on 16 millimeter also.
And then after that, ABC kind of decided they were going to go all digital, right? And so we got
Yeah.
the mandate that we had to go digital.
Yes.
And we really felt like the look of the show was incredibly important, you know, and that it's going to be jarring now to all of a sudden be on digital. And so we fought and we fought and we fought, and we weren't winning
Yeah.
for a long time. And eventually they continue to shoot on film, but it's got to be
Yeah, to be 35.
It's got to be 35.
Yeah, so it's expensive, but yes, I think it started. We wanted a film look, and we really kind of stuck to our guns on that. We like the graininess and the old-fashionedness of film.
Which is part of the subversion of the show. I mean, this sort of thing that it's all about detail, the show is. And
Yes,
when you pay
very
attention,
much.
it pays off in ways that are really rewarding. Let me ask you this, because one of the things, if you're from the Midwest, that feels really like a Midwestern tradition to me, that's been key to every season of the show is Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And to me, this Thanksgiving show feels kind of like the way Christmas shows feel in other shows. Mm-hmm. I mean, this sort of way where you're sort of building what expectations are versus that constant thwarting of expectations on
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
That links every season of the show. To me, has been kind of this thing that I love seeing it.
Oh, thank you.
Talk about doing that a little bit, Eileen. I'll
Yeah.
start
Well,
with
this
you.
year the Hex decided to float Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other thing because Frankie has to work. It's still a Thanksgiving episode, but
It's a different way
the
of doing it.
characters have to go out and then they come back together. So it's kind of a little different this year. But we love doing the holiday
Yes.
episodes because they're fun to do and there's all these
Thanksgiving
expectations.
for me more than Christmas, because shows don't really do Thanksgiving episodes
Yeah.
anymore. And that feels, you're talking about the Midwest at some point, especially when you leave the Midwest and you go back home for Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
you realize that how much effort goes into it's this
Absolutely.
exercise of will to try to make it into this thing.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter
it's the wrong time of year. Like Thanksgiving comes at a very tiring time of the year. It really does. And you got to cook, and there's all this pressure, and then you've got everyone at the table, and
One of my favorites is when she decides she's going to have the Marines come.
Oh,
So then
yes.
you have that.
Yes.
Then you've got the
people watching you.
Yeah. Then you've got you've added just another people watching you have to.
Dan, where'd that come from, that idea of just bringing these guys in?
It was my
Eileen,
parents.
don't you?
Yeah, my parents live in Palm Desert, and they said, a flyer went around about inviting Marines to your Thanksgiving, and we all, as a family, went, we could never do that. We don't want anyone to witness it. But that little snippet of that flyer stuck in my mind and said, there's a new way to do Thanksgiving. We got to have these Marines over, and it was a very, very funny episode because we imagined our own family and what would happen if we had two Marines watching us, and we'd have to be so polite, and that wouldn't be good.
That, for me, taking Thanksgiving and making it a key thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
the shows deal with it on occasion, but not on a regular
Yeah.
basis. And that feels like, it's basically sort of saying this is what's behind that Norman Rockwell painting.
That's right. It's very much like that. And I think that I know, for me, my memories of growing up, our family never took great family photographs, but there are many photographs of a bunch of people mid-bite or mid-chew, and so you don't not do it. That Thanksgiving is an important touchstone. I still, I think we both really love Thanksgiving. It's never cold enough in LA to have it. It never feels right, but it is sort of, to us, I think, the quintessential. Doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter anything. It's, we have a lot of affection for Thanksgiving, and I think that it's become something that people look forward to on our show in those holidays because, family tensions rise inevitably on a holiday, and that's always good for drama and comedy.
Because you said independent film, and when you talk about the pilot, but in some weird way, it does still feel to me like that, just because it doesn't have sitcom rhythms.
Right.
I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
even though we were talking about the pilot, and it was a little denser than the shows
Yes,
tend to
for
be
sure.
now,
Right.
it's still, the show doesn't have those kinds of rhythms.
Right.
I mean, the only thing that makes it feel a little bit like a and not even really, is that organ score, which also feels like the score from an indie film.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's
I mean,
quirky.
it doesn't. There's not a drum. There's not a rim shot. I mean, all
No.
these things. The show so much, again, for me, it's empathy and it's rhythms.
Yes.
And each character has a different rhythm. And when you were talking, Dan, about knocking them down, each character is in their own way indomitable. I mean, they're all completely positive.
Yes, they really are.
I mean,
It's
even Mike, when he tries to do something and it backfires in his face, like when he tried that unfortunate thing of trying to coach that girl soccer
Yes.
team, he still finds a way to sort of keep going. And that idea of combining these things, that's the square and outside of the mainstream,
Yes.
is the ingenious thing of the show to
Oh,
me.
thank you.
Well, we always felt like when people watch the show, they get it. But if you're just seeing the clips, or if you're just seeing, you might just think, oh, it's another family show, and not understand kind of, like you said, sort of that independent, it's quirky, but it's more,
Our show's kind of the kind of show where you go, just come watch and you'll see, and that's the challenge, getting people to notice, we're there, which they seem to finally be doing in 7 years. But yeah, we're really proud of that. I think it does
that's
have
what I was looking for.
Rye, that's our
rye.
word, of
Yeah.
course. Thank you. WRY, rye. That is the word. Yeah, we always would tell Patty that with her voiceover at the beginning. We always say rye and dry, rye and dry, rye and dry, not chirpy and happy.
I'm not so smart. And I like to think I get the show. I can't thank you guys enough for having come here. Thank you so much for
Oh
doing
gosh,
this.
thank you.
For
This was
having
really
us.
fun.
It was an honor.
You clearly have a low threshold for honor. That was DeAnn Heline, who's being very kind to me. Also joined here by Eileen Heisler, the co-creators of The Middle on ABC, now in its 7th season. Our recording engineer at NPR West is Patrick Murray. The show is mixed by Kat Yor. Is edited by Blake White, who's the associate producer. I'm Elvis Mitchell. It's The Treatment. To catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.